Released on December 22nd, 2015 for PC and Mac, we have Aviary Attorney by Sketchy Logic. The game was originally a Kickstarter project launched on December 10th, 2014 and successfully exceeded its original goal of £7,000 with £18,917 pledged between 1,503 backers during the Kickstarter period. For transparency, I would also like to state that I was one of those backers, backing £15 for the game and soundtrack. Set in 1848 in Paris, France, you play as defense attorney J.J. Falcon, who is accompanied by his assistant Samson as they go about investigating to prove their client's innocent, with their first client in the game being accused of murder. Over the course of the game, Falcon and Samson meet a colourful assortment of characters, as well as visit a variety of locations as they gather evidence to use in court. As you may have figured it out already, the game does draw quite a lot of elements from the Phoenix Wright series, including the trial sections where Falcon can press statements and present evidence while cross-examining witnesses, as well as the investigation side of things. But, is the game any good? Find out in The Good. I really like the historical accuracy and setting of Aviary Attorney. The game is also based around historical events as the July Revolution of 1830 is mentioned, and the tense atmosphere of Paris with King Louis Philippe shutting down public gatherings of disgruntled Parisians and censoring the newspapers, ultimately leading up to the February Revolution of 1848. While the game tells a fictional account of things which had transpired during that time period, the setting of the game brings life to it with the aforementioned tense atmosphere gradually building up as the game progresses. Without giving too much away, a key event in the game can ultimately lead up to 3 different endings for the game, and while it is possible for Falcon to lose the cases he takes up, the game continues, albeit a little bit darker. I also really like the art style of the game. The character designs were drawn from the works of J.J. Granville, a French caricaturist of the 19th century. Although Granville died in 1847, just under a year prior to the February Revolution, his distinct anthropomorphic caricatures, anthropomorphism is giving human features and qualities to animals, and style of art highlights as well as satirises life in Paris during that time period. While I won't go into any more details about the life of Granville, the use of his caricatures along with various scenes from 19th century illustrations was masterfully executed to play out as a scene you would find in a Punch magazine, who funny enough had cartoonists inspired by Granville. The font used also adds to the effect of the illustrations, and the musical score for the game are pieces by various classical composers, mainly, and I do apologise if I mispronounce this, Camille Saint-Saëns, as well as original pieces. The main piece used is Camille Saint-Saëns' The Carnival of the Animals, which is easily recognisable despite being composed in 1886, almost 40 years after the Revolution. The impact of the art style, font and music is one of the best things the game offers, and the person who was able to animate them did an excellent job of it. While the game does draw a lot of inspiration from the Ace Attorney games, it adds a few new features which stood out to me. The first is the introduction of Falcon's Wallet. Falcon can choose to spend the francs in his wallet on a number of things, whether it's donating it to some beggars, purchasing goods, or wagering it in games of Jacques Noir, otherwise known as blackjack. The amount of francs that Falcon has plays a big part much later on in the game, so it pays not to spend it all on Jacques Noir. The introduction of the jury is another interesting feature added. Based on your performance in court, you can gain a little bit of favour with the jury to help influence their decision and get that not guilty verdict. Another feature is the possibility of being unable to gather evidence. In each case, Falcon's been given a certain amount of time to prepare, and in order to prepare, Falcon and Samson go to locations around Paris to gather clues and learn about things prior to going to court. However, some locations consume a whole day, so you need to be absolutely sure where you're going relates to the case, and that you've gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you haven't missed anything. The evidence you overlook may well possibly be the key to turning the case around and preventing the bad ending to a case. With that, let's move on to the bad. I found that a lot of the choices I made in the game didn't really matter. One of the choices in question during the first case gives you the option of breaking into someone's property, which provides a big clue to the outcome of the case. Whether you choose to or not doesn't affect the story in any way, shape or form. Other minor ones that crop up involve what type of tea you like to drink, or even which country is better, the UK or the US. The illusion of choice seems to be implemented well, and while there are some choices that really impact parts of the game, I wouldn't mind seeing some more consequences for minor things you say and do in it. I also found the second case in the game to be pretty predictable and much easier, especially in comparison to the rest of the game. You can figure out who the culprit is quite early in the case, and from there all you really need to do is prove it. Parts of the case start piecing itself together through obvious hinting, and overall I found the story during the second case to be the weakest point in the storyline, although admittedly it still serves as a good bridge to the third case. At the time of this review, the game was at version 1.01, and an issue with that was that Act 4C was currently unavailable for me to play, as it had not been finished yet. However, the game is not listed as an early access title on Steam. While technically it is playable from start to finish, the game is not complete, so it should be an early access title. Once the game is released in its entirety, this point can be disregarded. Aside from that, I couldn't really find much else to fault the game with, so with that I'm going to present the opinion. Aviary Attorney, although draws a lot of inspiration from the Ace Attorney series, also introduces a few features that allow it to stand up on its own two legs, but in my opinion not quite enough to get out of the shadow of Phoenix Wright. While I didn't have to do much thinking outside the box, which is something the Phoenix Wright games encourage, the twists and turns of the story and the suspense Aviary Attorney has to offer certainly makes up for it. The idea of investigating scenes and solving mysteries and crimes has always fascinated me, and I have no regrets in backing this game. It was very well done, and I highly recommend the game, especially if you're a Phoenix Wright fan. It's a good motive to kill an afternoon with. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Aviary Attorney a box of chocolates out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review.